I'm pleased to be in New Orleans today. I'm always pleased to be in New Orleans. Honored to join with Mayor Mitch Landrieu, the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Tom Perez, the U.S. Attorney for New Orleans, Jim Letten, Eastern District of Louisiana, the New Orleans Police Superintendent Ronal Serpas, and the City Attorney Richard Cortizas, and announcing the latest action that our nation's Department of Justice has taken, along with the City of New Orleans. And I really want to emphasize that, along with the City of New Orleans, to reduce crime and to promote the highest standards of effectiveness, professionalism, and integrity at every level of America's law enforcement community. Now, today, the Justice Department and the City of New Orleans filed a consent decree to ensure that local police services are delivered in a manner that is effective and complies with the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Effective policing and constitutional policing go hand in hand. This agreement is the most widespread, wide-ranging in the department's history and requires the New Orleans Police Department to implement and to sustain a variety of new policies and practices related to training, the use of force, stops, searches, and arrests, sexual assault and domestic violence investigations, investigative and interrogative techniques, community policing, officer supervision, officer recruitment, officer assistance, and more, in order to address and remedy a range of unfair and illegal practices uncovered by a very sweeping United States Department of Justice investigation. Now, in many of these areas, and thanks to the leadership of Mayor Landrieu, Superintendent Serpas, and other city officials, I'm pleased to report that meaningful progress has already been made. Mayor Landrieu and Chief Serpas did not wait for our findings to begin the reform process. Once approved by the United States District Court and fully implemented by the city, this consent decree will allow us to move forward together, and will enable the people of New Orleans to have, in the words of Mayor Landrieu, and I quote him, a world-class police department. It will also resolve the government's allegations that the New Orleans police engaged in a pattern or practice of conduct that was both discriminatory and unconstitutional, and that too often undermined the public's trust and the city's efforts to effectively prevent crime. Now, I'd particularly like to recognize the Justice Department attorneys whose tireless efforts have made today's announcement possible. Over 2 years ago, an outstanding team from the Civil Rights Division Special Litigation Section, under the leadership of the Assistant Attorney General Tom Perez and Deputy Assistant Attorney General Roy Austin, initiated what would become one of the most extensive investigations of a law enforcement agency ever conducted by the department. Working closely with police professionals, experts, and numerous other department components, our investigative group spent nearly a year gathering critical evidence, interviewing city, state, and local officials, conducting a comprehensive review of internal documents and other essential information, and meeting with key stakeholders, including numerous community groups and dozens of members of the New Orleans Police Department. This consent decree belongs to the entire community and includes ideas that were brought to us by community members, frontline officers, and experts alike. As a result of the cooperation of the city and of the police department, and the depth of understanding that they demonstrated in decisively responding to the problems that were uncovered, we were able to complete our investigation in record time and immediately start the process of creating a blueprint for comprehensive reform, which will respond to officer and community concerns, correct troubling practices, protect the rights of New Orleans citizens, restore public trust, and ensure public safety. Now, there can be no question that today's action represents a critical step forward. It reaffirms the Justice Department's commitment to fair and vigorous law enforcement at every level. It underscores our determination to work alongside federal, state, local, and tribal authorities to protect not only the safety, but the essential civil rights of everyone in this country. And although it's clear that there can be no one-size-fits-all prescription for police department reform, it is my hope that the common sense steps contained in this consent decree will serve as a reference point and a potential model for success in our future efforts. I believe we can all be proud of this outcome. And I want to thank the many support staff members, investigators, and attorneys who have been involved in this case for over 2 years and whose efforts have helped make this result a reality. I'd like to acknowledge our strong partnership with Mayor Landrieu, Superintendent Serpas, City Attorney Cortizas, and the other team of negotiators. I'd also like to recognize especially the brave men and women of the New Orleans Police Department who have served this city through incredibly challenging times and who through this agreement will gain the tools, the training, and the critical support that they need. The reforms that are already underway and will flow from this decree will make your job not only easier, but I believe also more rewarding. Now, let me be clear. The problems that we have identified were many years in the making and preceded this current administration. They are wide-ranging, and they are deeply rooted. Sustainable reform will not occur overnight, but we can all be encouraged that it is already happening here thanks to the leadership of Mayor Landrieu, Chief Serpas, and so many others. But the concerns that we addressed today did not begin on Mayor Landrieu's watch. With hard work, with patience, and with community determination, they can end on it. And now I'd like to turn things over to a key partner in this reform effort and an esteemed colleague, the Assistant Attorney General, Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and good afternoon, and thank you for your leadership on this. I was confirmed in October 2009, and one of the first conversations I had with the Attorney General was about New Orleans and what we can do to work collaboratively with the police department to enact the sustainable reforms that have been ongoing. So I want to thank you for your leadership in that, and I want to thank my good friend Jim Letten, who's always been a remarkable partner with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I want to thank you, Mayor, because about 2 years ago, we stood here together to announce that we had accepted your invitation to begin the reform process by conducting a thorough and independent review of the New Orleans Police Department. In your letter that you sent almost immediately after taking office, you said that your goal was the complete transformation, quote unquote, of the NOPD. And we shared that goal, and in the ensuing year, we conducted that independent and thorough review that you asked for. We peeled the onion to its core. As the Attorney General correctly pointed out, we had the cooperation not only of Chief Serpas, but the entire department. We did ride-alongs. We learned from officers. We learned from community members, and we were able to develop the document that we released last March. And then we immediately sort of shifted our focus to the development of a consent decree that will serve as that specific roadmap for reform and the accountability document that would guide our actions moving forward. And so today we have reached the end of one phase of this reform process and the beginning of another. And our consent decree is constructed around three basic goals, and these are shared goals: reducing crime, ensuring respect for the Constitution, and enhancing public confidence in the New Orleans Police Department. This consent decree is, as the Attorney General correctly points out, the most sweeping and wide-ranging decree in our department's history. And the consent decree touches virtually every aspect of effective constitutional policing. There are provisions requiring the department to take actions in the area of recruitment, training, policy development, use of force, stop searches and arrests, effective supervision, bias-free policing, access to policing services for people with limited English skills, data collection and data integrity, officer assistance, effective investigation of crimes involving allegations of violence against women, evaluation and promotion of officers, internal control systems to investigate allegations of officer misconduct, and secondary employment. There is significant emphasis on transparency, community engagement, and sustainability. The decree places tools in the hands of the entire community so that long after the agreement is ended, effective constitutional policing will endure. There are creative approaches to assessing compliance that focus on meaningful outcomes and encourage innovation by the police, innovation by the community, innovation by everyone. So in short, the decree builds upon last year's exhaustive letter of finding and indeed constructs that comprehensive accountability roadmap. The department and the city have also agreed to an open, competitive process for the selection of an independent monitor who will play a key role in ensuring the effective implementation of the reforms. In the meantime, as the Attorney General correctly pointed out, reform efforts continue under the leadership of Chief Serpas, who did not wait, has not waited a moment to begin those efforts. And he will continue to do so, I am confident. And to the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, we want to say again, we appreciate your absolutely dedicated service. All NOPD officers should know that our goal is to provide you, as the Attorney General correctly pointed out, with the tools necessary to succeed and to make your job that much easier. The case has now been assigned to Judge Susie Morgan, who will review and hopefully approve the decree. We will continue reaching out and learn from police officers, from staff, from the community members alike. Again, this is your document. It reflects your ideas, your values, and your aspirations for NOPD. In the years since Hurricane Katrina devastated this great city, New Orleans has undergone a dramatic rebirth. Much of the focus has necessarily been, and continues to be, on bricks and mortar reconstruction, literally putting this city back together, rebuilding its infrastructure and its communities. Today is about rebuilding a core part of the fundamental infrastructure of democracy, an effective, accountable police department that reduces crime, ensures respect for the Constitution, and earns the trust of the public it is charged with protecting. And I appreciate all of your efforts, Mayor, and it is a privilege for me to now turn the podium over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking the people of New Orleans for their confidence and for their patience. I also want to thank President Obama for his unyielding commitment to the rebuilding of the great American city that all of us call home. Mr. Attorney General, I thank you for your friendship, for your partnership, and for your involvement in this effort. Tom, you and your team have been great to work with, and I thank you for that. Jim, you have been at our side the entire time. We have members of the City Council here, our DA, our Sheriff, other elected officials, Senator Peterson, Representative Brosette. I thank you all for coming. And I also want to thank our team that helped negotiate this consent decree. I think they did a fantastic job representing the interests of the people of New Orleans. Chief Serpas, City Attorney Richard Cortizas, Erica Beck, Ralph Capitelli, Brian Capitelli, Danny Kazanev, Brian Arthur, and Jerry Chaliff. I want to commend you for the work that all of you did together to produce this document. Now, making our city safe is my top priority as mayor of New Orleans. We together will do everything in our power to make sure that the culture of violence in this city is transformed once and for all. I appreciate what you, Attorney General, and your team have done to help make this day a reality. Now, after more than 2 years of work, the consent decree is done. However, today marks only a milestone in what will be a long journey back for the New Orleans Police Department. The people of this city should rest assured that together we will fundamentally change the culture of the NOPD once and for all. Before I was sworn in as mayor, I came to see you all in Washington, D.C. to ensure that we were on the same page about the vision that we had for New Orleans and for the New Orleans Police Department. We all knew that New Orleans could be physically rebuilt, that we can improve our schools, and that we could bring new jobs to the city of New Orleans. But, and it was, and it is, a big but, all of our progress would be for naught if New Orleanians did not feel safe, if they in fact were not safe, because they could not feel free. We have an unnatural murder rate that for 3 decades has been much higher than the national average. Compound that with decades of corruption, racial profiling, and misconduct by some members of the New Orleans Police Department, both threaten the ability for many in this community to feel safe, to be safe, and to actually be free. We knew that we had to tackle these challenges head on together. So I thank you for your commitment. I have been known to say that Katrina did not cause all of our problems. She only made them more apparent and more visible to all of us. In the days after Katrina, many men and women of the New Orleans Police Department committed brave and selfless acts of sacrifice. Thousands of New Orleanians owe their life to the lives of members of this police department. Unfortunately, their stories will never likely get told because of the sheer thuggery, thievery, and callous disregard that some officers had for the truth and was displayed by some members of this department in the aftermath of the storm. While the American justice system delivered a clear message that no one stands above the law and that police abuse and misconduct will not be tolerated, those heinous acts highlighted systems that had completely been disregarded for years. Hopefully today, those families will bring additional closure to what was a sad and dark chapter in this city's history. The citizens of New Orleans deserve a police department that protects, that serves, and partners with the community to keep our city safe. On my third day in office, I invited the Department of Justice to partner with us to reform the NOPD. That voluntary partnership, I believe, will be the thing that allows true change to take hold. On May 17, 2010, the DOJ began a formal and independent investigation into the patterns and practices of this department. We asked for it, and we got it. In March 2011, the Civil Rights Division described a department that in many ways had lost its way. The report found that New Orleans police used too much force against civilians, too often didn't report it, and often failed to investigate the use of force thoroughly. It noted that African Americans were disproportionately arrested when compared to white citizens, that Hispanic and Vietnamese residents were discriminated against, that sexual assaults were not properly investigated, that training programs and internal investigations were inadequate, that there needed to be more focused approach on community policing, and that the paid police detail system was a corrupting force in the department. Knowing this, and knowing that reform of the NOPD is the first order of business, we did not sit idly by and wait for this consent decree to be signed today. We have, in fact, begun and implemented a comprehensive 65-point plan to completely, and I want to say that again, completely remake the New Orleans Police Department. That plan and the new leadership has helped kickstart the new NOPD. This consent decree codifies reforms that are consistent with operations of a world-class police department. In the old NOPD, there was little accountability and limited oversight. In the new NOPD, we insist on total, complete transparency and have redesigned and opened CompStat meetings to the public and added FBI agents to NOPD internal investigations teams. The consent decree will increase accessibility for those wanting to file complaints, including posting information in Spanish and in Vietnamese. And the NOPD will work more closely with the independent monitor in analyzing NOPD policy outcomes and data from arrests and from stops. In the old NOPD, officers reported for duty and were dispatched to different neighborhoods on different days. In the new NOPD, we deploy smarter, putting the same officers in the same neighborhoods day after day. The consent decree will also mandate requiring cultural awareness training and smarter deployment. There will be a focus on community-oriented policing, and we'll see how we improve through regular community surveys of the department. In the old NOPD, many officers' first duty was to their paid details, which were not managed in any centralized system. The result was conflict of interest, officers with divided loyalties spending most of their time on details, unequal access to earn extra money, cash exchanges, and the perversion of the command structure. In the new NOPD, paid details will be more limited and better managed by an independent office outside of the department. Ladies and gentlemen, this work has already begun and will be led by retired Army veteran Lieutenant Colonel John Salomon, who is with us today. In the new NOPD, an officer will only be allowed to work no more than 24 hours of detail within a 7-day work week and no more than 16 hours within a 24-hour period, ensuring that they get at least 8 hours of rest between shifts. Most importantly, in the new NOPD, officers will understand that regular duty police work is their first responsibility. In the new NOPD, police officers will have significantly more access to training and to better equipment. All cop cars will be outfitted with cameras, so there will be no more he said, she said. Plus, we have a new class of 29 recruits that will hit the streets in the next several weeks. We've raised the bar for our newest officers. In the new NOPD Academy, the program is more extensive, more rigorous, and based on instilling community policing practices. The consent decree will require the recruitment of better skilled and better educated officers and better in-service training for all officers. In the old NOPD, sexual assault victims were ignored, and the crime lab was barely functioning. In the new NOPD, with the help of the National Institute of Justice, State Police, Marshall University, we have eliminated a multi-year backlog of 800 sexual abuse cases. Victims are now getting answers, and we have gotten 70 new leads in rape cases that had gone cold. This is just the beginning. The consent decree filed today is the most extensive and far-reaching in this nation's history, as our Attorney General has said. Since the March 2011 DOJ findings report, the NOPD has not relented on its commitment to satisfy all 147 recommendations covered. With the consent decree filed, not only do we have the weight of the federal government behind our reforms, but we know the transformation of NOPD can be systemic and, more importantly, lasting. This is the new NOPD. Make no mistake, the Department of Justice and this consent decree will not solve all of our problems. This begins and ends with us, the people of the city of New Orleans. Just as we will be the ones to rebuild our city, we must be the ones to reform this department and win back our streets once and for all. An improved NOPD is critical in reducing murder and creating a culture that values life. To the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, know that your mission is to protect and to serve. Know also that I will do whatever I can to provide you with the resources you need to fulfill that mission. We stand by your side in the process. You, in fact, occupy a sacred place in American democracy. At once, in your interaction with citizens, you could be the most powerful person they see, the distance between them and their liberty. So my message to you should be clear. For those of you that have done the great things that you have done with the past, please buy into the new NOPD and continue to do the work. For those of you that don't, please leave. Today would be a good day to start. We are moving forward. There is nothing here, my friends, that is broken that cannot be fixed. There is no problem here that cannot be solved. There is no offense between us in the city that cannot be forgiven. We can and we must change. And we now have a clear roadmap forward. So let's roll up our sleeves and get back to building one of the best police departments our country has seen. The people of New Orleans and the people of America deserve no less, and I know that the men and women of the police department can deliver. I thank you all very much. And now turn it over to Chief Serpas.
General Holder, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Let me begin by saying this. I am proud to be a member of the New Orleans Police Department. This is the most historic day in our history in the most noble profession on the planet, being a police officer. And we call to every one of our officers who understand that true service, because today is the day forward that will make us the department we need to be. General Holder, I must tell you that Tom and Roy have been amazing. We've worked very closely, and from the very first day of my appointment, Tom and Roy both said, get things done that need to be done. And we've done that. Our very first policy, if you will recall, is to require officers to tell the truth, always. If they submit a false or inaccurate report, you will be terminated. Those were new policy statements that set the stage for building how we would transform the connectivity we need to have with the people of this city. In doing so, we have not waited. There's about 147 items that we thought were actionable inside the DOJ report issued just in March of 2011, just 15 short months ago. Our staff has implemented 59 policy changes to address those 147 items, and we think they are a step towards proving that this department can and will comply with the consent decree. The brightest minds in the NOPD, the brightest minds in the Department of Justice, and the brightest minds in the Monitor Office will look at all of our policy formulation as we move forward in this police department. We will do it as a team. These last 2 years, we've expanded our community outreach. 2 years ago, we didn't have community coordinating sergeants, COCOs, if you will. In the last 2 years, those sergeants have led hundreds of meetings with tens of thousands of New Orleanians in concert with them to talk about crime prevention, to talk about policing, to talk about the things that we need to do to better serve this police department. 2 years ago, we did not have an El Protector program. Today, while it is not enough, we have one police officer dedicated to the Hispanic-speaking community of our town, and we have another officer dedicated to the Vietnamese community. And in concert with Catholic Charities, they have office space embedded in these neighborhoods. It's not enough, but it's a start. 2 years ago, we kicked off our monthly crime walks, where we walk with grandparents, where we walk with children, where we walk with people who say to the criminals in our neighborhoods, we are reclaiming our streets. We're working with this police department to make a difference. As part of the consent decree, and announced recently this year, we will have police community advisory boards. These boards will come together. We've had over 100 people apply to be part of these boards. They will help direct and help us understand the challenges and how we should face them. One of the things I'm the most proud of, beyond, of course, Mayor, our commanders who are with us today leading this fight in the street, our Deputy Chiefs Albert, Westbrook, Boyalis, who are helping lead the fight. Chief Landrieu is on vacation. We appointed, for the first time in the history of the city of New Orleans, someone to run our internal affairs unit who was not a lifelong police officer. In fact, Chief Westbrook is a licensed attorney with over 14 years' experience litigating cases on behalf and against police. My last check of this, Attorney General Holder, there's only 3 departments in America that have a civilian licensed attorney running their internal affairs, and they are Seattle, Nashville, and New Orleans. And we welcomed that change, and our officers welcomed that change. 2 years ago, we had half the number of homicide detectives we had today. With the DOJ's assistance, you'll recall, they sent experts to New Orleans. And those experts gave us 82 ideas about how to make the homicide unit better, not because of a lack of desire, not because of a lack of will, but because of a lack of expertise. And the BJA experts gave to us 82 recommendations, and I'm proud to tell you that Kirk Boyalis, the Chief of Detectives, has already implemented all of those findings. We are moving the police department forward. Our supervisors are better trained now than ever. The International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Louisiana National Guard, the Department of Justice Community Relations Service have all provided leadership training, cultural awareness training, and racial profiling training to our frontline sergeants and lieutenants in this police department. And we did raise the standards to be a police officer. This class of recruits that will graduate next month had to have a minimum of 60 hours of college credit or a successful 2-year military career, or they could not even have applied. We also, with the assistance of the Community-Oriented Policing Service Shop, Attorney General, increased our training academy by 200 hours to meet what the Community-Oriented Policing Service section recommended we do to instill community policing. We're getting stronger every day. There's no question about it. I am confident that we will succeed. I am confident that crime will go down. And I am confident that the NOLA for Life plan will be the blueprint that brings us all together to reduce murder now and into the future years of the city of New Orleans. Mr. Mayor, this police department will not let this community down, and we will not let one another down. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Jim.
Good afternoon. It is with great pride and gratitude that I stand here with the Attorney General of the United States, for whom I'm proud to work, Attorney General Eric Holder, Tom Perez, AAG Civil Rights, our partners, Mr. Mayor, Chief, City Attorney, and our other partners out here who have worked so hard together to get us to where we are here today. I will tell you, I believe, and I believe it's true, that nowhere in this great country is the daily bare-knuckled struggle against nature, crime, corruption, and innumerable challenges played out so poignantly and heroically every day as they are in this great city. And you, the men and women of NOPD, are at the tip of that spear, protecting our citizens every day. I've watched you, I've seen you as I grew up here. I've watched your men and women do heroic things, and to this day to build tremendous cases against violent offenders in federal court, taking dangerous predators off the street. I've seen the reforms that you have made, Chief, and Mr. Mayor, and the miles that you've come in the couple of years since that first call on that Sunday afternoon when you reached out to us to rebuild this police department, to tell us that you wanted to move this city forward, and thank you. And I will tell you that we've come so far here. The teams that made this consent decree possible have come so far in such a short period of time with enormous work and commitment and enormous professionalism and devotion to that duty. But we have a long way to go. And so I will simply say to you that all of us together speak with one voice with you when we tell the citizens we serve that nothing less than complete success is acceptable. You, the men and women of NOPD, the heroes who honor the badge, deserve no less, and more importantly, the people of this incredible city deserve no less. Failure is not an option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney General, thank you. Thank you all. Since the Funders Report was released in March of 2011, we have had a team of very dedicated lawyers and law enforcement professionals that have worked to ensure that the consent decree is not only enforceable and sustainable, but that it will drive the NOPD to become a world-class police department with constitutional and community-oriented policing at its core. The Department of Justice findings report has served as an important template for this consent decree. We believe the city and the police department are positioned well to move quickly towards meeting all the required mandates. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the Department of Justice in achieving sustained reforms within NOPD that will guarantee constitutional policing for all of the citizens of this community. I would be remiss if I did not recognize the members of the community who work closely with the Department of Justice and with the city in helping implement these reforms. I would also like to thank the legal and negotiation team that worked closely with my office. In particular, Erica Beck, Ralph Capitelli, Brian Capitelli, Byron Arthur, Jerry Shalev, and Danny Kazanev. And as well as our Chief of Staff, Judy Reese-Morris, who was with us all along the way. Thank you, Judy. I'd also like to thank the Department of Justice negotiating team, beginning with Mr. Tom Perez, Roy Alston, Christy Lopez, Emily Gunston, and Corey Saunders, as well as our U.S. Attorney Jim Letten. This endeavor was a real team effort. To echo the mayor, this is by far the most extensive decree entered into in the U.S. history. Most importantly, though, this consent decree will have a lasting effect in transforming the New Orleans Police Department and in making our city a safer place to live, work, and visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Attorney General. We've heard the mayor and the police chief express a lot of optimism here. How optimistic are you that the city will achieve the mandate contained in this consent decree? And what are the repercussions or penalties if that does not happen?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very optimistic. I think that, the Justice Department has been through a number of pattern practice investigations over the years, and I've been through them as Deputy Attorney General during the Clinton administration, as Attorney General during the Obama administration, and my cause for optimism is based on these folks here who have committed themselves to this reform process in a way that I have not seen other city administrations do. They've already taken positive steps. Absent the consent decree, I'm confident that working with us and through the consent decree, either further reforms will occur. These are problems that are long in the making, started long before this administration, and will not be cured overnight. You will not see, immediate results, but over time and with hard work, I am confident that we're going to see a different New Orleans Police Department and a better New Orleans.
Mr. Mayor, some of the experts we talked to today say that some of these reforms included in the consent decree are going to cost additional city dollars. Are you prepared to put more money behind the police department in these reforms? If so, how much and where's the money going to come from?
The answer is yes, and I'll tell you in a minute. The first question was, is it going to cost more? One of the things you heard me talk about was actual more infrastructure improvements and then being able to give the police officers the resources they need. We expect at this moment, and of course this will change over time, that it's going to cost about $11 million more per year for the next 4 or 5 years. The council members and I are about to go into budget negotiations over the entire city budget, and we'll deal with the appropriate mechanisms to pay for that at that particular time. There's no question, though, that if you allow, for example, deferred maintenance, when you catch up, it costs a lot more to get where you need to be. And so we'll be discussing that issue with the members of the City Council as we start the budget process, which all of you know is starting in earnest in a couple of weeks as we do community meetings around the city, and then the budget will be presented to the council on October 1st and then adopted before the end of the year.
The federal monitor is going to be chosen. Obviously, you guys laid that out. There will be a public process open to the public. But what role will that person play in correlation with you?
You want to take that?
Superintendent Serpas? Will it be like a 1 and 1A, or will that person have? Will he be involved in meetings in the planning process, or will
You want to take that?
oversight or anything else?
I'm going to ask Tom to take that to give you a sense of what federal monitors have done in other consent decrees, and then if there's some follow-up in terms of how it will practically work, I'll take that, or the chief will in a minute. Tom?
The answer to your question is no, it won't be 1 and 1A. Chief Serpas is the chief of the New Orleans Police Department. However, monitors have been very, very helpful in other cities in enabling cities to enact the sustainable reforms that are called for in the decree, and we're confident that the process that we are leading here will result in the selection of a very remarkable monitor. And we have in this decree, there are some remarkable provisions that will help us focus on outcomes. If you look at, for instance, paragraph 456, what it says is the monitor should look at what has to be done in the decree, but then in a couple of years, he can ask the question, or she can ask the question, is this the best way to do it? And if the answer is we can build a better mousetrap, then he'll discuss that with the city and with the United States. And if we can build a better mousetrap, we'll do just that. So there are a lot of provisions built in here that are going to enable these sustainable reforms to occur hopefully swiftly, and occur with the assistance of the monitor.
Very briefly, it's important, I said a few minutes ago, the brightest minds of the NOPD, the brightest minds of the Department of Justice will look at every policy that we implement in the next many years to comply with the consent decree. The federal monitor is that person who's neutral, who says, your police department doing what it's supposed to be doing, or your police department needs to get better, and here's where they can get better. And that's going to be a great tonic for the city of New Orleans and for our police department.
Ryan, hang on a second. I want to address this in the intermediate. My administration, from the beginning, has always believed that the American public are better served when the federal, state, and local governments are working in complete and total tandem. It is one of the reasons that you've heard me say many times that our team has met with FEMA over 350 times, because we are constantly in communication with each other so that you can build it from the ground up. In our experience, that has created a more effective and efficient government, not only in the recovery, but in the delivery systems as well. And I expect very much that while the police chief is the chief of this department, and it will not be micromanaged by government, there will be complete and open communication to make sure that this goes as swiftly and as quickly and as correctly as possible. And we believe that that model will get us there faster than an antagonistic relationship that is similar to what has happened in other cities as well. All right.
Attorney General Holder, considering this is a 4-year decree, and it's also what we call one of the most broadest as far as even at the time, can you talk a little bit about the 4-year number? It's much shorter than other decrees that were significantly small as far as the length. And talk about that number and how it came into play, how it came to negotiate.
Well, maybe I'll let Tom answer that question, but I will say this, that, it's a 4-year period that is set out there. That can be extended if the requirements are not met, if the goals are not met, but I'll let Tom.
It's a 4-year minimum, and as the decree outlines, there has to be 2 years of sustained compliance in areas before those areas are deemed to be in full compliance. So we will continue to work together, and as we've said many times, the United States will be here for as long as necessary to ensure that sustainable reforms are enacted, and not a day longer. And this decree allows us to do just that.
Chief Serpas, was there anything in the federal investigation that you disagreed with, either in the final findings or in the implementation?
No, we've had an incredible relationship since May 10th or 12th, the first time I met with the federal officials. They are professionals looking for the best police department, as are we. There was very little room for disagreement, and the disagreement had to do with issues that weren't substantive, perhaps, but certainly, no, I'm very satisfied with the investigation, what it found, and what we need to do.
Mr. Attorney General, does the federal government have any plans to help subsidize the cost of these reforms? And do you have any idea of when your department will be seeking a similar decree with the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Department?
Well, we will certainly be listening to any of the requests that are made to us with regard to funding. One of the things the Obama administration has really tried to do in these really tough economic times is be supportive of our partners in local, state, and tribal law enforcement. And we'll certainly listen to what needs are here. In some ways, I think that what we're trying to do here can be a template for what we're going to try to do in other parts of the country. In some ways, this is almost an experiment. And so to the extent that we can, through grants, technical assistance, other things, help this become a successful effort, that will redound to the benefit of other things that we're doing in other parts of the country. And that's the commitment that we are making here today.
Yes, if I might, I'll end and then I'll wrap. You've heard me say many, many times that your city has become this nation's most immediate laboratory for innovation and change. That is why President Obama chose New Orleans to be what they called an SC2 city, strong cities, strong communities. The purpose of that entire episode, and that's why, Eric, where are you? Eric works with President Obama's office and actually works in the mayor's office with us. We have tried to link together the executive branch of the federal government and the executive branch of city government. And it is my intent to continue to talk to the federal government about ways to be a better partner for cities to do the things that we all think are important. Many of you will recall that back in the 90s, the Department of Justice was more robustly funded in many, many of the iterations, whether it was OJJDP or whether it was in the COPS program, whether it was in the Weed and Seed program. And those funding sources, coupled with a great amount of work on the local level, helped secure the streets of America. I have said many, many times that the federal government has and should be a robust partner with local law enforcement and the community in terms of making the streets of America safer. And I'm going to continue to advocate to Congress to give the Attorney General the tools that he needs to help us do the things that we say we need to do. They have been a willing and a great partner. Obviously, there's a grant process, but we will be asking, and I very much expect that this partnership is going to continue both financially and from an intellectual capacity side as well as technology. So, Tom, you want to finish up?
Sure. The input of the community and members of the police department has been invaluable. Tomorrow, we will be having meetings here open to the public at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock so that we can hear directly again from the public, and we encourage you to come to those meetings. We will continue working very closely with Chief Serpas to have meetings with the command staff and with frontline officers so that we can answer any questions directly that you might have about this decree, because that inclusion has been a critical part of the success of this enterprise. This is your document, and we want to make sure we continue to have that real-time feedback from all of you. And the city will be there tomorrow with us as well at those two meetings.
Mr. Attorney General, I thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your partnership, and we look forward to the work that we do.
Everyone,